Seems to me that mental health tends to be a privilege in countries of higher economic status and more developed. Um, there are a lot of factors and nuances and things of that nature that go on to that. And when I say mental health, I mean the idea that those in more developed countries like the U.S., UK, Canada, et cetera, um, Western European countries and the like, they tend to suffer from mental health um, issues more than those of lesser developed countries. You're talking Southeast Asia, South Asia, and countries like and Africa. Um, and I just want to go over some of the aspects as to why that may possibly be. I don't think this is a certified answer, but it's definitely an interesting idea that, you know, in America we tend to think that we have the highest quality, the highest standard of life, yet we are arguably more depressed than all of these lesser developed countries. But there may be a reasoning for it. One of the ideas that gets brought up is the idea of mental health care. We have a lot more availability to mental health care, and the cultural beliefs around mental health are a lot more open, a lot more friendly, a lot more liberal in the sense that there's less of a stigma and it's more accessible to seek a mental health care professional. While in lesser affluent countries and underdeveloped countries, um, the funding for healthcare is more so for actual physiological care in terms of, you know, something's messed up with my body, I contracted some disease, I have a degenerative, disorder, all these sort of things. So this could alter the number of reported cases, which the data is used to collect on these studies. And there's also a cultural taboo on the idea of you know taking one's life. Um, you know, the idea there is some reports that in lesser countries, more conservative countries, traditional countries that are less developed, the taboo around taking one's life isn't necessarily something that gets registered as often on maybe a death certificate, especially in your very religious countries where it's considered bad. I'm thinking of Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, these sort of um, very theocratic countries. And another issue that is brought up, I don't know if this is true or not, but the idea of weather. The closer you are to the poles, the north and the south pole, the more likely your mood is affected. You know, for whatever reason, the most affluent countries are closer to the poles than the lesser developed countries, which are near the equator. And seasonal depression is something that definitely exists, and the number of reported cases of mental health does seem to rise during the winter months, which is definitely interesting, I think. Um, and on top of that, I would say is also the availability of drugs. In America, I'm uh, a few steps and a skip away from buying enough alcohol to kill myself without, being questioned or stopped. There's also different types of drugs that make their way into this country. Not to say that, countries of lesser um, developedness have no access to drugs. I'd just like to argue that the variety of drugs that we have available is quite profound, to say the least. So, there's correlation to say that people in America, people in wealthier nations, for the most part, tend to drink more alcohol and consume more drugs and things like that. And then there's also cultural, social pressures. Think about how we're all pressured to go to college, get a job, make six figures, afford these crazy houses prices, all those types of things. The effects of urbanization. You think about personal space. Very limited. by this urbanization and this urban sprawl and all these sort of things where suburbanization has really taken a toll. People are walking less, exercising less because of this car dependent country we've found ourselves in. I don't know if my AP Hug teacher is watching this, but he's very against um, car dependency. So shout out to you. You know who you are. Um, so all of these kind of factors interplay with the idea that, you know, this constant chase in America, especially, and I'll say America because I've lived here my whole life, where, you know, that constant chase of trying to make it up in the totem pole. I'm not happy because I didn't get into X college. Well, the person in that college is not happy because they're not the top of their class. You know, the top of their class is not happy because they didn't get the job or internship they wanted. So there's always, you know, a basis of comparison. I feel in America that's exemplified. That's not really, um, you know, shown as well as, you know, places like South Asia and Southeast Asia and the African countries. A lot of them, you know, that idea of just making ends meet, making sure food's on the table, you know, making sure they can afford the basic necessities is, you know, the only basis of concern. So it's almost, um, the word privilege is often associated with the idea of developed countries, yet we're a sick nation mentally. And, you know, Gen Z especially, we're just at a constant daze, scrolling on our phone. You know, every once in a while we'll see a motivational TikTok, and it'll make us excitable, make us motivated, cheerful, hopeful. But, you know, it's kind of just to feed you that little short blast of dopamine, which, you know, you know, doesn't make, you know, make you motivated, doesn't make you, you know, feel ambitious enough to pursue that, you know, your life has meaning. And I think it's just definitely an interesting talking point. Of course, mental health is something that should not be taken lightly. It's a real thing. Um, but in America and things of that nature, I just find it interesting how the quote unquote standard of life is significantly higher than it is in other countries, yet we are subject to the the downfalls and pits and never ending spirals of mental health. So maybe, just maybe, we should alter our definition of standard of living. But yeah, with that in mind, you are loved, and there are people who care about you. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy your day, and I will see you tomorrow.